Alrighty, decent we the people. News, not attorney, not giving legal advice. Educational purposes only. Never look straight forward. Always look around you. Be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. Look at that Second Amendment. Study it. Use it to be able to protect yourself. Okay? So, with knowledge, by the way. Alright, we're going to go back into Texas' new chief judge. There's a couple of things I like about him. But would he be able to stand by his word? And like I said in another video, there is a family court issue that he's going to talk about. And which does need whatever the law that came with, whoever came up with that. Never mind. The word I shouldn't use. It's a ridiculous law. Let's go ahead.
And that is not the rule of law. It sounds much more like the rule of judges. If we can all agree that judges shouldn't replace the legislature's policy choices with their own, then surely we can all agree that judges shouldn't put their own policy choices into the Constitution. But that's exactly what the idea of the living Constitution invites judges to do. And for that reason, the Texas Supreme Court has repeatedly held that originalism, not living constitutionalism, is the right way to interpret our Constitution. Hear me say this. In Texas, under this Supreme Court, the living Constitution is dead.
I 100% agree with that. Okay. And however, this is the reason why we have 400 constitutions here in the state of Texas, right? Because our legislature has to find ways to violate our rights. There's no reason why we should have 400 of them, right? How many years we've been under 10? Under even the federal? And they had to make 400? Sit and think about that, y'all.
And that fact is a big reason why I can confidently say that the state of our judiciary is strong. But another big reason is one I've already mentioned. It's the hundreds of hardworking judges all over our state who go to work every day to deliver fair and consistent justice for Texans. That includes the judges on our two newest courts, the 15th Court of Appeals and the Business Court, which you created last session.
Again, what did they just do? Credit a business court? Let me breathe. So in Texas, a corporation can actually create a divert corporation. So when it gets sued, the corporation itself will never be sued. And this is what our legislature did, right? So when you get injured and you make a claim against a business of harm, loss, and damages, where you're not actually suing that one particular company. You're suing a different company so they can file bankruptcy so that way they don't have to pay out. Just saying, y'all. Texas is so ridiculous of how they mistreat the people. I happen to be one of the victims of it, right? And according to Texas judge here, they ruled on the corporation that was clearly established at fault. But because the state of Texas and the judge, right, decided, no, you don't get nothing. So I was stuck out of the hospital bill a couple $100,000. All right, let me go.
Are up and running. The governor has made excellent appointments, and these judges are now doing the important work that you asked them to do. I especially want to thank Chief Justice Scott Brister of the 15th Court of Appeals for returning to the bench. Back quickly to the topic of judicial pay, he had to leave the bench many years ago to help send his daughters to the college of their dreams. But his daughters are grown, and he's back on the bench, and the state of the judiciary is stronger because of it. Consistency, predictability, fealty to the law. These are the marks of good judging. And the more consistent, predictable, and accurate our judging is, then it's not just that there will be less uncertainty and less expense associated with litigation. There will also be less litigation, fewer lawsuits. The very best litigation is the case that's never brought. The case that doesn't have to be brought because the parties know what the law is. They can
No, it's because you can't afford it, people. Because attorneys will just cost you $100,000 to bring it up to them. And most people on an average basis can't even afford it. So, I digress.
predict how the courts will respond to their dispute, and so they can settle their differences out of court. It's awfully hard, though, for parties to rely on consistent and predictable rulings when they might have one judge at today's hearing and another judge at the hearing next week who may not know what happened at the first hearing. That's not a common practice in Texas, but it does exist in 2 of our counties. And it's an outlier compared to nearly all the courts across the state and across the country that I'm familiar with, where each case is assigned to a single judge whose job is to manage the case from filing to judgment. I've asked the court's advisory committee to recommend rules to eliminate this rotating docket, sometimes called the central docket. And we're open to opposing arguments, but the Constitution charges the court to make rules for the efficient and uniform administration of justice in the various courts. And it's just hard for me to see how assigning a different judge for each hearing throughout the life of a case promotes the efficient and uniform administration of justice. In an ideal world, every lawsuit would be decided based on its merits, not based on non-merits factors like the expense and trouble and uncertainty of litigation. And that's an aspirational idea, but we should work toward it. We should do everything we can to streamline and simplify litigation for both plaintiffs and defendants, and to reduce the extraordinary burden in time and money of modern litigation, particularly of discovery. The Supreme Court can amend the rules of civil procedure, and I welcome your ideas for changes along these lines.
Well, the one simple way is tell the prosecutor not to keep you in jail or on bond for 2 years before they decide to drop the charges. How about that, judge? How about you tell the prosecutor actually obey the Texas law, Criminal Code 14, 15, and 16, and the Transportation Code 543? How about that, judge? How about you tell the administrative branch on the bottom, give us clearly and decide which jurisdiction we're in when we challenge it? How about that, judge? That would make everything a lot simpler, judge.
But I don't want to just complain about how other courts do business. We at the Supreme Court also need to ask whether our court, our own procedures, promote the efficient administration of justice as best they can. And we're doing that. I've asked the advisory committee to study whether the court should join nearly every other Supreme Court in the nation by waiting until we've granted a petition for review before we make the parties pay for full merits briefing. We welcome your thoughts on that as well, and on any other ideas you have for reducing the expense and burden of litigation at all levels of our courts.
Easily, judge. Corporations supposed to pay for it, not the people. That's battery. Us causing harm, loss, and damages by charging us to have a right. Okay? The court cost is the privilege of using the courts for the corporation. If I cannot afford your court, then how am I going to have due process? If I got to pay for paperwork time and time again to get inside the court, how's that due process? Even the common law says that if the courts charge you, then it's battery. How about look at old cases, and how about think for yourself instead of going by precedent of wrongdoers in the judicial branch in the past.
Chief Justice Hecht often used this speech as an opportunity to demonstrate the court's dedication to helping low-income Texans get basic legal services. That dedication remains, and the court appreciates the legislature's continued funding for these programs. The court as a whole will keep up that effort, but my focus will be on systemic reforms that make legal services more affordable for everybody, both by simplifying and streamlining the law and the rules of procedure, as I mentioned, but also by looking at how we regulate the legal profession. It's not just the poor who have trouble affording lawyers. I think it's most Texans. It's many small businesses. And basic economics tells us that as the supply of legal services goes up, the price will come down for everybody. It also tells us that government regulation of a service drives up the price. So how do we raise the supply and reduce the price of legal services? We must be open, I think, to carefully changing the way we regulate the legal profession. And one idea is to allow qualified non-lawyers to provide some basic legal services for a profit. There are plenty of other ideas, and I'm not committed to any particular version of them, nor am I interested at all in a conflict with the legislature.
So I'm not 100% sure. I think there was a case a while back saying that they don't have to be bar members, okay? Here in Texas, okay? But I never really dug too deep in there. But it was one attorney, I'm led to believe, that challenged it and said that he don't want to be in the bar because of too much crap in there. And they didn't believe in the political powers of the bar itself. And so he fought that and won that he don't have to be a bar member. Okay. Now I'm thinking, okay, just my opinion, that if you don't have a bar license, then you could be a counsel. Okay. But I don't know for sure. But that's what he's kind of bringing up now. And I'm kind of thinking he's still in that same category of that non-lawyer thing.
Over which branch of the government has the power to do this sort of thing. We should work together on this. If we can agree that the average Texan has been priced out of the market for many legal services, then we've all got to ask whether the way we regulate the profession is a part of that problem. And some people will oppose it. And if that opposition comes from a genuine desire to protect Texans from fraud or incompetence, then I'm all ears. But if the opposition comes from a desire to protect lawyers from economic competition, then I'm not interested.
Kind of like family court. I'm just saying. Even attorneys. You ask an attorney in the family court part, why don't you become a criminal attorney? Because it pays better to rip off the family. They don't say rip off the family, but it pays better to be in family courts. Okay? I'm adding that extension, right? It pays better to rip off the family, right? Divorce courts shouldn't be near the headache it is. It's the attorneys grabbing all the wealth from them until both sides of the party has got to file bankruptcy. In every state, not just Texas. These are We the People News. Bye, y'all.